Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another week of Tech Talk. Gentlemen, good to see your faces again. Mikey, Mike, what do we got today?
So today's topic is all about moisture. We've had quite a bit of humid weather down in Melbourne recently, and I know that's not something that's specific to Melbourne or Victoria. Obviously, it happens all over. So we'd like to bring this topic to the table for discussion, just some issues that can come into play when it does come to humidity and not just humidity, I should say, but moisture in general. But humidity is kind of what's brought it to the table this time around. Who'd like to kick off? Who's come across some of these issues?
Well, I've come across these issues outside, where around pool surrounds and saw cuts and all that kind of jazz. But I was going to ask, does it just happen outside or does it happen inside as well? Like, I know humidity can affect anywhere, but where are we seeing the main sort of issues? Like, I know I've had a pool surround, but I'm not sure what the rest of you guys have had. So I guess my question is, can it be both inside and out?
Certainly can. We've had a lot of calls this month. In particular, everyone's rushing to get everything done before the fat man comes. They're just going through the motions. I've got to get this done. These are the steps I've got to follow. Outside, it's absolutely, pissing down with rain. 10 minutes ago, now the sun's out. It's like, fantastic. I'm going to start putting this sealer on this low gloss surface polish that I've just finished. And I'm just going to go put this solvent-based impregnating sealer on it. And although I can't see outside right now because it looks like I'm in the shower, there's so much humidity in here. There's water beating off the windows. I'm going to put this sealer down, and I think everything should go all right. Right? It's a solvent-based impregnating sealer. Everyone's pushed up against these deadlines, and we're getting lots of telephone calls saying, "Hey, I installed this. I installed the sealer 2 hours ago, or I installed it last night. I'm trying to burnish it off, and it's just like trying to remove scum off the surface. What's going on here?" And I think that's been the scenario for several projects, particularly down in Melbourne. Brandon, you've also mentioned the exterior honing, and the same kind of deal. Lots of moisture that we're dealing with, kind of just ignoring the environment and just rolling through and doing our process because we've got deadlines to meet. And so that's pretty much what I'm seeing is people just going tunnel vision, got to get it done, next one. But there's a whole lot of different environmental factors that, in particular in Melbourne, we're just not used to, like, sunshine.
And just building on what you've said too, Josh, we've had a discussion around this prior to the Tech Talk, but it was brought up as well that you have applied the solvent-based sealer, you have burnished it off successfully, or so you thought. And then I think, Tim, you were talking about you can come back sometimes, and there is a frosting, if you like, or the moisture's actually affected it after the burnish fat.
It's sort of a foggy sort of look to the floor. So like Josh said, you've got a lot of moisture in the air. So those solvents don't really have as much where to go, given that a lot of that air's got moisture in it and so forth. So you tend to get more residual sitting on the floors. It tends not to react and go off as quickly because the solvents aren't coming out as quickly. So you can tend to experience sometimes a bit more surface residue of sealer, and sometimes you can actually come back the next day and it looks a bit sort of, it was really crisp and clear the day before. Now you've got sort of a bit of a fogginess, or it looks like it's almost just sweating a little bit because there's still sealer that hasn't been able to do its thing. It reminds me a little bit of when we used to make machinery. You could make a machine on a really on a high humidity day, and we would seal them up. What happens is you can open up these machines sometime later and they're all corroded inside because you've sealed this machine up so well, you've actually locked moisture inside the machine, and then when the temperature of the machine changes, that moisture can condense on the inside of the machine. And sometimes the houses are a bit like that as well. You got a lot of warmth and humidity in the day, close the house up for the night, sealer's gone down at the end, the air's cooled, all that humidity that's in the actual air inside the house is actually turned into moisture. It's not staying as airborne, and some of that moisture can then start sitting on the floor as well. So there's a few things that go on depending on where what stage the house is at, how well it's sealed up, has it been open during the day, now it's closed, all those sorts of things are going on. So it's about being aware of all these sort of factors and nuances And that's just an interior thing. Then we're talking about some of the things that Brandon's talking about, where we're talking about outside, and we're completely exposed to the elements with external concretes and slabs.
And concrete's
I think we've
just a big
mentioned,
sponge, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's why it's so soft.
I think we've actually mentioned that before, that even during wintertime, heaters on 1,000 degrees inside and it's freezing cold outside, and similar scenario. I know we've spoken about that before as well.
Everything wants to get inside. The people, everything.
What are some of the things that we can do to help this situation, do you think, guys?
I guess it's no secret that solvent and water don't mix. We know that not just from this tech talk, but from previous tech talks as well. But there are alternatives that we can do. If you can't change the environment or get the moisture out, which probably is not the case. I mean, it goes the same for slabs close to coastal. They're exposed to more humidity, sprays from the ocean, things like that. Even garages, wet cars coming in, things like that. So the alternative is to maybe use the water-based impregnating sealer, which will be more tolerant to moisture. So you're less likely to get the solvent-based headaches during high humidity or high rainfalls and things like that. So that's your alternative, really.
I thought the water-based meant it was green, though, wasn't it? Isn't that the idea of the water-based?
You get both worlds, and we're not in a drought by the sounds of things, so it's perfectly green. Unless there's any other solutions we can, contribute to it, but that would be my solution. Just use the water-based and you won't have any headaches.
Mm-hmm. And the application process is the same as the solvent-based, is it?
The only thing to be mindful of when applying down the water-based impregnating sealer is if you're doing 2 coats, it has to be wet on wet. Otherwise, if you wait too long between the coats, what's going to happen is, because it's water-based and it's designed to repel, it's actually going to repel that second coat. So while it's still damp, you want to get on that second coat onto the floor, and then you won't have any dramas.
Very useful tip. Yeah.
But in terms of buffing it off and things like that, it performs very, very similar to the solvent-based.
All right. So what about the scenario for Brandon? He's got customers applying solvent-based acrylic sealers externally. We've got a slab that's maybe 70 mil thick. It's got saw cuts in it in order to prepare the surface. It's been ground back, then it's been acid etched, then it's been rinsed and neutralized multiple times over. So tons and tons of moisture. A pretty well open slab, because we've actually reacted with all the capillaries and actually made them more receptive to taking in moisture. And now we want to go and put a solvent-based sealer on top. What are some factors that we need to consider? Quick, the rain's coming.
The rains or the rains for the reindeer for Christmas? Which one? Oh.
Hey, Milan.
Yes.
Are you planning to have to expand the family soon? Because your dad jokes are really coming on strong.
I learned off the best, and that's yourself and Tim. No, but that's a very good question.
Which one?
The dad
All
joke.
of them. All of them. All of the above.
When your dad jokes come on strong, babies arrive. That's how they're made.
Yes. Oh, this one might be for Tim. Just wait it out. Wait for it to dry out. And don't apply when the rain's coming.
Well, I think you need to be aware of the sorts of things that you're working against. And like Josh said, how much moisture are you dealing with? How much have you actually been putting into this? How long is that actually going to take to dry out? How can you be sure? What are other sorts of factors at play? Is there plastic underneath of it? Is there not? Sometimes there is, sometimes there not. That has a huge impact on moisture retention or the ability for moisture to ingress into concrete. You just can't just treat all these things the same, like Josh is talking about. So it's probably just as much being mindful about the variables you got to be taking into consideration so that you can be giving it the best chance of success, rather than just treating it all with the same approach, because it's outdoor, it's just external sort of finish, and you just do this sort of thing all the time. So being mindful of those sorts of things. Is rain coming? Is there saw cuts or not in the concrete? I mean, we had a job the other day where every saw cut, you could just see moisture just going in sideways into the slab. Correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, but those saw cuts were actually put in after the sealer was done. So you've got a sealed surface.
They're only like 4 mil. They're only 4 mil wide.
Yeah, but only 4 mil wide, so not much water can get into them. That's right, because they're only a very small entry point. But 25 mil deep. I mean, if you got a 5 mil wide saw cut, that's 25 mil deep. That's 25 mil on either side. So you've essentially got 50 mil of exposed surface area on the sides of the saw cut for 5 mil entry. So you got 10 times as much area on the sides than you have on the entry. So you've got a lot of opportunity for that water just to go sideways into the concrete. Recognizing where the entry points are, and are you doing something about that? Are you actually sealing the joints, or are you filling them to minimize the amount of moisture that can actually ingress afterwards?
I even love one that has an established garden, and then we come in and we grind it all. And so we've opened up the top of the concrete, and then we acid etch it, neutralize it with tons and tons of water, rinse it all off into the garden bed, and then we seal the top. But there's all this soil up against the sides of the concrete, and the concrete is out in the sun, and it is just sucking up all the moisture out of the garden bed and trying to exit through the top that we're just rolling our sealer on. So there's so many different factors that you need to take into consideration. Everything can be a success. You just need to be mindful of all the contributing factors to the success. Just set yourself up for it.
And would it be just solvent-based acrylic sealers that we're talking about? Could it be other sealers as well?
Well, they tend to be the ones that most people are using, because from a cost per square metre, they're by far the most economical. Yeah, you could go to impregnating sealers, which allow breathing and moisture migration, but most of the contractors that we're dealing with aren't using those kinds of products just because of the actual cost. And not only that, we're talking about a more honed finished concrete. So contractors are looking to get more colour out of the slabs, so they're traditionally looking at something like a penetrating sealer like a Penex, just to lift that colour, enhance that decorative look, which you're generally not going to get that much from with a impregnating product. When you're talking about guys that are finishing concrete at sort of 60 metal, maybe 100, 120, the solvent-based acrylics would get far more colour enhancement and enrichment and make that piece of concrete look a lot more attractive than probably certainly the water-based impregnator, but even the solvent-based ones aren't going to really be in that same ballpark from a colour, beautification, enrichment sort of effect. So it's one of the reasons why they're so popular outside as well.
Jay, you've got a coatings background. What are some proactive approaches that contractors can ensure that they're setting themselves up for success in high humidity conditions?
I guess for me, when I found myself in a bit of a phase of rain like you guys have got in Melbourne, it's very rare though, but it does happen. I was always on the weather apps. I was always kind of trying to be in front of the weather, so to speak. There are some moments where you really are risking a lot of product, a lot of your time, potentially disappointing the client with failure. So for me, I would always kind of err on the side of caution. If I knew it was going to be a 60+ humidity day, and I felt in my gut that potentially putting down a coat was going to be a failure, it's just a matter of a phone call, seeing what sort of leeway I have with timelines. I mean, you can push product so far, and then, all your experience in the world, the weather can get the better of you, and it can make you look like a fool. So, I mean, as much as there's ace cards out there, water-based, solvent-based, picking certain times of the day, running blowers on your work, sometimes it's just too much of a risk. It's best to just call it a day, make a phone call, seeing what you can do to kind of maybe give yourself a second chance the next day, or maybe potentially the week. I mean, it won't be the end of the world. It will be the end of the world for the client if it's a failed job. You have to go back again, spend more time. It may not be worth it.
Well, particularly when you look at, the percentage of the project that the sealing application or the sealing activity is compared to everything else you've done. I mean, you're putting a lot at risk, like you're saying, Jay. If you've been etching that and grinding that and all that sort of stuff, and it's just a couple of roll coats and you're walking away, And let's face it, that can be done in a fairly short period of time, the actual, just the sealing part of it. If you're looking at a failure and having to go back, you're talking about investing a lot of time as a comparison to what you're actually saving by just getting that sealer down and being able to walk away in that last small time stage of the process. So, yeah, what are you playing with?
Yeah, 100%. Hence why, a weather app's your best friend. If you can see a bit of a gap in the weather that's favourable to your project, explain that to the client, explain it to the builder. This is my game plan. I want the best result for you. It's all about them. It's not so much about us, even though we are looking after our hip pocket and our time is precious. So it's all got to play a part. I mean, we can't always rely on the product to get us over the line, and blaming, the supplier when things fail. It could have very well been the wrong decision made at the wrong time. So, there's more factors than just the product. I think we have to take a bit of responsibility as installers as well. So
either that, or if you want me to do it today, you might as well slot 3 extra guests in for your Christmas pool party, because we'll be there with the guys redoing around the pool. We'll be resurfacing it amongst the guests.
Serious question for you, gentlemen. Who's your favourite weather presenter?
Jane Bunn. I was going to go Jane Bunn, yeah.
Jane Bunn.
Yeah.
Tim Bailey?
Tim Bailey, of course, yeah. He's not around anymore on the Weather Channel, but Tim Bailey.
Yeah, great entertainer.
At the best weather.
A little about weather and more about other things.
Living in Melbourne, I've often just wanted to see the weather presenter come out and go, you know what? I've got no idea. Take an umbrella. It'll either keep the sun off you or the rain off you, because it changes so much in one day. I've just got no idea.
There is my favourite weather presenter, Mike.
The umbrella
I think the forecast is very, very moist indeed, coming through with a high chance of bubbles and and hops and barley will be present.
Is that our time?
Sounds like a good idea.
I think that's us then, boys. I think Mikey has predicted the right weather. I think it's beer o'clock. It's raining ales and all sorts outside. So let's get on it and have a great weekend, everybody. So thanks for another awesome Tech Talk. We'll catch you on the next one.
Cheers, Brendo. Cheers, guys.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
See you guys.